All right, welcome to episode number 18 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Our episode today is supported by Fellowship Brand. It's premium grooming products for today's modern man. Go to fellowshipbrand.com or follow on Instagram, fellowship_brand to check out some awesome products today. My guests, and yes, this is the first time I get to use the word guests because there's two people here, is Meygan and Casey Caston. They're the founders of Marriage 365. They create content, author books, develop resources, speak, coach couples, and more. They focus on the complexity of creating and sustaining healthy marriages. They're known for their openness, their realistic approach to tackling the heart of key relationship issues, and they strive to help couples create strong, connected partnerships built through honesty and communication. I'm excited to have both of you on the podcast. It's an honor. Welcome.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, of course. I like the long intros. I like to dive right in, give you a few things to build off of here. As we're looking into the end of the year, like what's going on with you guys? What's going on with Marriage 365? Let's dive into some of this.
Oh man, what a year, right? I can't believe we're on 9 months of COVID when I remember they promised it was going to be 2 weeks.
I know, right?
I sometimes wake up and pinch myself going, am I still in this season? Like, is this just a dream? No, it's not. Shoot, we're still doing this. Yeah.
It was a crazy year because there was so much professionally. There was a lot of growth in the company. Our team grew, revenue grew. Our focus got clearer. We pulled off a couples retreat. We published a 4th title. We did so much stuff. New site went from .org to .com. I mean, there's so many things that happened.
Okay.
It was like the workload just increased exponentially. And then at the same time, it was like our kids are at home, and there was so many times where it was just, I don't know. I missed the opportunities of I was so busy with work that I didn't get a chance to connect with the kids like I wanted to.
Well, let's say this. We already provide online resources for couples, right?
Okay.
So then COVID hit, we were the fortunate few where we already had systems in place. Like our team's already remote, so we didn't have to learn Zoom. We already know how to use that, right? Things like that. So business-wise, professionally, we soared. We did really well. Personally, we had a lot of emotional issues. And I would just say it was just, we're both extroverts. It was really hard not to be around people. We saw our daughter, who's a teen, go from just this happy kid who loved school to being just really depressed at home and not being able to be with her friends.
A's and B's to D's and F's.
Yeah.
And you see you see a sadness too. And it kills me to see what the young kids are going through. Because the lockdown, I think that's going to be the long-lasting impact of a full year of missed education. And for someone that's turning, going into high school, junior high school, even into college, I mean, that's unrecoverable. That's going to stay with them for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. But I think too, we saw a lot of our friends, they had to close their businesses, take out loans. We saw a lot of divorce, a lot of separation, right? So if your marriage was already hurting before COVID, about half of the couples we saw it get better because the excuse of we're busy wasn't there anymore. And the other half the couple said, I really didn't like you before COVID, and now I really don't like you. So,
I read a statistic or a study, and I don't know, how well known or well published the study is, but it's from a organization. It's the National Law Review. They talked about that the divorce rate during COVID shot up almost 34%. And then the divorce rate of recently married couples who were married for less than 5 months at the start of COVID went from 11% to 20%. And so I was kind of blown away by that. And I was kind of saving that for a little bit later. But since we're on the topic of marriage and divorce, and we can get into the story of Marriage 365 in a second, but what do you make heads or tails of that? What do you think is the leading indicator in rising divorce rates between individuals, especially during a lockdown?
So one of the things I noticed is that whenever stress comes into our life, right? So, and we've done this before, 2008, right? We went through an economic crisis, the .com bubble of 2000. These stresses come into our life, whether they're macro level, national level, or they're just, a death in the family. And what happens is it kind of starts to unearth what's at the bottom. I feel like it reveals whether or not your marriage was strong or if it wasn't. And I think success can actually be one of these greatest clouds of like, it can allure us into like, oh, we're doing good because we've got money flowing, or, we're being successful on these other layers. And then economic stressors kind of reveal everything. And if you haven't been focused on building your relationship in the good times, when the bad times come, that weight comes down on that structure and it just implodes on itself because there's nothing really there to shore it up. There's no healthy habits of date nights or, doing a marriage business meeting or regularly investing in each other. So now we're going through a stressful time. And instead of coming together as a team, we see each other as the enemy.
And I 100% agree with him. And I would also add to that busyness. We often say that busyness is the number one killer of marriage. And I think couples before COVID were busy and they weren't really aware of how bad it was. So there were things under the surface, but the schedules and the work and, they kind of almost live like roommates more than lovers. So it was a distraction. And then all of a sudden that's removed from you and you're faced to go, shoot, well, now that we're not busy, we have to really look at our marriage and wow, I'm not happy. Or, we really do have a lot of conflict. And it was really hard to see a therapist because most therapists weren't seeing couples. And again, I don't think people know that we exist. Like not enough people know we exist because there's so many amazing resources that we have for people all around the world. And I think that they felt hopeless. And of course, when you feel hopeless, you tend to say, well, the only option is divorce. Yet that should be the last option. There are so many other options than divorce, but couples just don't know.
So let's talk about the genesis of Marriage 365 then, and then, maybe talk a little bit more about some of those services, those resources, those types of things that maybe couples can gravitate towards so that they can maybe get some relief or open up their communication or all the great stuff that you guys are out there producing.
Well, the genesis of Marriage 365 actually stems back to when we were first married. Dating was really easy. We met in college sweethearts.
It was romantic and fun and exciting and thrilling.
It was awesome.
We had the butterflies all the time. It was good.
I think a lot of people were jealous about us on campus too. I mean, we had quite the spark. Wow. We were definitely like that couple that was like love at first sight. Okay.
There was an instant attraction, an instant connection. And so,
I think the expectations going into marriage was like, well,
let's just do this forever.
This is going to be rad.
This is never going to end.
Marriage is going to be rad because we're having so much fun dating. And I would say on our honeymoon night, the issues started to surface. And we had known each other's childhood wounds and kind of the soft spots. I grew up we both grew up in broken families.
It's what drew us together is we both grew up in broken families and we knew that we didn't want to repeat that mistake. That was actually one of the things that we talked about on one of our first dates.
Yeah. So you had childhood trauma. I had abandonment wounds and stuff that
we
worked through.
We had stepbrothers and siblings. And
so my mom's on her 6th marriage.
My dad's on his 3rd marriage.
Okay.
So we really came from a similar background in that circumstance. And then we got married and just honestly, if I can cuss on here,
of course,
shit hit the fan really fast. It was bad. It was ugly.
I love that you have to ask to cuss.
I don't know.
Just go for it. No, this is as authentic as we can get here.
Permission to speak freely, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I think what happens was all of the marriage is a unique dynamic that's not like dating. And, you start working as a team and you've got to work through conflict. And here I am trying to avoid issues and all these childhood things that were unprocessed kind of came out. And so it really was because we had no examples growing up of a healthy marriage. We didn't have any mentors to show us the way. Books that we read were not helpful in understanding, like they tell us what to do, not how to do it.
We couldn't afford therapy. Sure. We're both very stubborn, very prideful people. We're both leaders, strong-willed. We had unhealed trauma, of course, that was never dealt with. It all just came out in the surface. And by year 3, we not only like hated each other, but we were heading for a divorce very, very quickly. Here we are following in our parents' footsteps, the thing that we swore to each other we weren't going to do.
And then the turnaround.
And then the turnaround was this. I learned quickly that I couldn't control Casey, that it didn't matter if I nagged or bitched or complained or cried or manipulated or given the silent treatment. I tried every tactic, Jake, in the book.
And that's how stubborn I was.
And I couldn't control him. And it was
you ain't changing me, woman.
The will is strong with this one.
Yes, so strong. Stronger than me, and I'm pretty strong. And I remember going to therapy, and I thought, you know what, fine. I just got to do something. I got to talk to somebody, right? And I was married really young, so none of my friends were married yet, so they didn't understand. And the therapist was so great, and she said, so you spent 40 minutes talking about your husband and how bad he is. Now, he's not here to defend himself, so he could be a bad guy. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I can be that safe person for you. You can complain, you can vent, and I will validate and I will listen. Or I can help you become the healthiest version of yourself. And I'm fortunate enough where I chose option 2. And so she said, meet with me. I can teach you everything you need to know about how to be a healthy person. We can deal with that childhood trauma. I can teach you boundaries, how to forgive your husband, and he doesn't even need to be on board. And so for 13 months, I worked on myself and completely let go of trying to control Casey. I let it go. I was like, you know what, whether my marriage works out or not, at least I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to take responsibility for my role, because I was very toxic as well. And about 13 months into that,
I saw a lot of confidence. I saw healthy boundaries. Anytime I'd engage with her, she put a full stop, like, hey, I'm not going to let you talk to me like that. And she'd walk out of the room and say, hey, in a loving way, hey, when you're ready to connect with me and engage with me in a healthy manner, I will be here for you. And so I lost my sparring partner. And I saw such a like peace that she carried about herself. And I got jealous. Honestly, I was jealous of it and I wanted it. And that's when I jumped on board. And
there was years of healing.
Yeah, it took a long time to repair 3 years of,
big, massive, ugly fights. And we continued to heal. And as we were healing, we were really disappointed and kind of shocked at the resources that were available. They didn't seem to meet the needs that we needed. They seemed to be watered down or just not really relevant.
Was it that they were more like textbook, or were they more like of like didn't reflect reality necessarily? Like help me understand that concept a little more.
I was having a hard time forgiving him, right? He said all these mean things. He did all these mean things. And the book said, well, you need to forgive him. How do you forgive someone you feel hatred towards? I mean, they didn't tell me how to do that. What were the steps? Someone would say, you need to create boundaries. Great. I love that concept, but how do I create boundaries? What does it actually look like? How do I communicate them? How do I implement them? What do I do if he doesn't follow through? I wanted real life examples. I'm much more so of a person that needs step-by-step. So a lot of the books were, here's what you need to do, but they didn't teach the how. Here's how you do it. And I think that that's really where we started to go, gosh, you know what? We started creating our own resources for our own marriage. Our friends started noticing, our family noticed. I mean, everyone was very shocked that we were able to turn our marriage around. I mean, if any couple was going to fail, it was going to be us.
Yeah.
And so once we started creating these own resources, like, well, you know what, gosh, we need to do this and we need to do that. We thought, what if we create something where we help other couples? And that's really where this kind of started.
Yeah. And I was actually, in order for us so we buried ourselves in like hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And part of our way to get out of that debt was actually officiating weddings.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I got to meet with couples that were, thinking about getting into marriage. And early on, because that was like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I would ask them a question, but like, hey, so what's your plan for succeeding in marriage? And I'd share a little bit about our story. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to wing it. And I'm like,
good luck with that.
I don't think that's an effective strategy. Let me tell you, because that's what we tried. I got the whole thing like, oh, well, we love each other so much right now. When we get married,
Nothing's going to
Nothing's,
change.
we're just going to keep this love going. I'm like,
oh, you're like, that was us. That was the same thing we thought. Oh.
And so I think that out of all of that, out of this idea, like, wow, people don't know what they're doing. Here's our own story of like really almost losing it all to bringing it back. What did we do? What were the specific actions? What's the mindset? What's the attitudes? And then, how do we teach that to someone else? Because it's one thing to like discover it on your own and kind of like work with it, but then you got to teach it and you got to build constructs around it. And you know what? Look at, we're not therapists. We're not super duper like, like this isn't like a higher ed type of thing. And we realize like, the most of the material that's out there are written by people that are teaching these classes that are so high level shelf. Top shelf, that it's not accessible for the majority of us. If you're going to sit down and talk to most of your husbands and say like, tell me about your attachment theory, attachment to your mother's instincts of nurture and care for you. We'd be like, what are you talking about?
For sure.
I joke a lot that it's like Marriage 365 for dummies. I don't want to call people dummies, but
of course.
Right? I do feel like we really had zero education on how to make a marriage work. Most people don't know how to make a marriage work. The desire's there. So we really educate couples. So we started honestly with a Facebook page. That's what we started with. And one follower became 10,000, became 100,000, became 400,000. Then it was like, well, we should start a blog and we should start an Instagram and we should write a book. And we're not afraid to try things.
Yeah.
No.
We just go for it. And along the way, we've learned a lot, but really we wanted to provide affordable, high value resources for couples, and there'd be no excuse for someone not to be able to get help for their marriage.
Well, that is awesome. That's an awesome story. One of my favorite quotes, I guess, out there is a Deming quote, and he says, "Variation is the enemy of quality," right? And so, like with that, I think a lot of what I'm seeing, or at least my experience, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, is like being able to put names to things and being able to know how you're going to face certain situations or challenges that repeat themselves in your relationship. If you get some reps of handling it the same way or a really good way, maybe a way that you're doing now that was different than what you were doing before that got you a better outcome, like, why not learn what that's called? Why not learn what those triggers are? Why not learn how to create that better outcome with your partner and bring them along for the journey? It's exciting.
It's motivating, right? I mean, when you try a new technique in a relationship, it works, even if it was uncomfortable or difficult or a little hurtful or painful, but the outcome, you're actually closer. It's very motivating to keep going. And I think one thing that couples, if anyone's listening that's married, needs to know, conflict is inevitable.
Right.
You're going to argue and fight multiple times in your lifetime with your spouse, whether you want to or not, even if you're an avoider, even if you think you're so in sync, because it's impossible for two people to agree on everything, right? And I think if people went into marriage knowing like, okay, so we're going to fight at some point, we're not going to see eye to eye on something, let's be prepared and let's learn how to navigate that together as a couple. Because it's beautiful on the other side. You come out stronger.
And I'll take a second to talk a little bit about my experience with your course, if you don't mind. My wife came to me about 2 months ago, and she goes, "Hey, I've been following these two folks on Instagram, and hey, I really want to take this course together." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, what's it called?" And she goes, "Reigniting Your Intimacy." And I was like, "Well, hey, like, let's be I guess a little more honest about the status of the flame, like, I don't know if we're reigniting anything," but she's like, no. She's like, it's a lot of you watch videos, it's questions, it's exercise. She's like, it's communication. That's what I want to do. I think it would be fun. Would you be willing to do it? And so, we don't do it every week, but we've done it every other week on our date night that we we schedule, and we watch the video and we kind of work through the exercises. And I tell you what, like I was surprised how many stones we turned over that I thought were a done deal, you know, and that was probably the biggest surprise to me. So maybe, you know, in that same vein of thinking, like one, what was for that particular course, like what was the core or the catalyst to start it? And then two, like maybe similarly, what do people find out about that part of their relationship, or the intimacy part of their relationship when they go through it?
Yeah. So the genesis of that course was really just putting together and assembling existing pieces that we've already had in the business.
Yeah.
And we're like, you know what? So part of our membership is you get access to these webcasts, and it's kind of like pushing somebody into the deep end. Like, hey, Jake, take a look at, you know, these 60 titles and pick which one you want to go after first. And I think that could be a little overwhelming because some people, they don't even know what's broken. I mean, that'd be a big aha and awareness, is actually to know and identify like what is broken about a relationship. So couples don't talk about sex. Like it's funny because it'd be like the topic that you'd think most guys would be like, let's talk about sex. Yeah. I want to talk about having more sex. I want to talk about being good at sex and good at foreplay and being a really good lover. And yet I think we assume like it's a natural biological feature of your body. You should just know exactly how to touch my penis and exactly the right way. But that's not the case. And couples that don't talk about sex typically, obviously, don't have a very satisfying sex life because they're just trying to make guesses and assumptions on how to love each other well. And so I think what you're experiencing, Jake, is what a lot of couples would experience. Is just like, well, oh, so this is actually how to have a healthy conversation inside the context of a committed relationship of how we can improve our sex life.
And you're watching a real life couple, you know, it's just us.
Model
it and share our own struggles, because we haven't always had a good sex life. And I think too, knowing that you're not alone in your struggles. And I think then watching something, being able to watch a couple talk about it in a healthy way. And then we give you those questions that a therapist would ask you. And you get to do them on your own time in the privacy of your own home with no audience watching you, right? And you just get to move at your own pace and really have these deeper conversations. And of course, you took a sex course, the Reigniting Your Sexual Intimacy course, but we have so many. And it is true. You kind of need a step-by-step with marriage, right? It's such a massive topic that these courses, our membership, these other things that we've provided really give you, here's step one. And then step two, step three, because that's really what we needed when we were healing our marriage, was not just, like I said, here's what you need to do, heal your marriage. Okay, well, where in the world do I start with that?
But I'd have to say, though, even therapists and the books that are written out there about relationships tend to make it feel like marriage is complicated.
And boring.
Okay, that too.
Can I say boring too?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Can.
It's my big thing. It's my big frustration with therapy is that a lot of people go and they assume that's how all marriage resources are. And I'm like, no, we're like fun and we're real and we make it fun for you.
What I'm just saying is it's just so it's simple. It's just sometimes we don't know what that step-by-step guide is. And Jake, and I think that comes from the fact that Meygan and I grew up in broken families, but they say that 80% of millennials came from a non-traditional family setting, meaning biological dad, biological mom under the same roof in a committed relationship. So that means only 20% of millennials got to experience that. So think about if you didn't, you don't know what you don't know, right? You never saw healthy relationships model. How are you going to do that in a marriage?
Well, and I thought it was pretty funny too, because I sat down on the couch and I didn't know anything about either one of you. I didn't even look it up. She asked me to. I didn't, obviously. So we sit down on the couch and we start to watch it. I'm like, oh, what's Dr. A and Dr. B got to tell me? Like, I'm talking myself out of it. And by the way, I'm a process improvement guy. I'm a self-improvement guy. It's like all these different things. But the second that some other people were going to start talking about a topic that I don't really talk about aloud very often, like at least in that way, I was just turning it all down. And then like 20 minutes in, I'm like, all right, this is pretty well done. Like, all right, it's kind of relatable. All right, like I'm ready to have the conversation. And then I found myself being like, hey, when are we going to do the next one? Like, it was kind of fun to unpack that.
I will say, I mean, obviously I'm a female and I work with a lot of women. Husbands tend to like our resources more than anything out there. And I think there is something different. Like if you go to a therapist, right, you are only with one person. You're either with a male or a female, and they don't usually share personal experiences. I think a lot of husbands really appreciate that it's a male and female perspective. Yeah. I think they like that they get to do it in the privacy of their home. Of course, they like the fact that they're saving a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
Therapy is great. It's worth it if you have the money, but a lot of people don't. And I think that there's just some kind of comfort. And of course, we talk about oral sex and masturbation. I mean, we just don't hold back. And I think husbands are like, oh, this couple actually will go there and talk about it.
Thankfully, we're in a room by ourselves filming, because it's probably not something we'd say like in a public forum, like, hey guys, let's all talk about oral sex, right?
Yeah,
let's make this really uncomfortable for everybody.
So, I mean, a parallel track here, like how has this course changed your marriage? Like how is creating all these assets and like constantly focusing on relationships keep you from like the constant magnifying glass of yourself and like the constant pursuit of, I don't know, perfection? Like how do you keep your head straight when you're always surrounding yourself with, I guess things to improve upon, or like people's problems or those types of things?
Well, I'm going to say, I feel like I'm the biggest benefactor of Marriage 365. Every time we go out on date night, we pull out our couples book. And then when we're done with our couples book, we pull out our engaged book that's full of questions for engaged couples, or our self-discovery book that we just published. And I think that we use the weekly marriage business meeting. We use the same structure. So, in the age of influencers that are out there, even some high profile influencers that went down in flames with a divorce, specifically even some that have claimed to be relationship experts, I just wonder if they are following through on their own advice and listening to what they talk about. Because I'm confronted with that, I think, with our material. Like, what you see on camera is exactly what Meygan and I are in real life. So it's not hard to get in a camera and just go for it. Yeah. That's not hard at all, because we're just showing up. Like, it's not like we're method acting or anything like that, or we got to dig deep, or, I'm going to be this character or something like that. No, I am who I am. Probably a little bit more structured on a webcast. Sure. But that is who we are. We show up with authenticity.
Yeah, I was going to say, we value vulnerability and authenticity because, especially in the marriage space, we have to stop looking at Hollywood and these influencers as having all the answers, because they're lying. They're trying to sell things, or they're telling themselves there's no problems. We need to look at the regular couples that are in your life that just are trying to do the best. I mean, we've even fought on camera, and people afterward, it was really uncomfortable.
That was about me interrupting you.
Oh, we've fought a few times.
We've done a couple lives.
But you know what people say after is, thank you, because that's what we do. And I'm like, oh, we're just like you.
And we've canceled film days too. When Meygan and I haven't seen eye to eye, there's conflict. And
so here's one of the rules we have, Jake. One of the rules is our marriage comes first. Mm-hmm. So if we're not doing well, we stop everything in our business.
Full stop.
And we deal with our own shit. So that's one rule that we will never change. We are someone where, we practice what we preach. I'm too, because I'm authentic in general, I cannot go on camera and pretend to be happy. You would know I would be lying. And so that's what you see when you're watching us, or when you're reading things. Like, you'll see like, wow, they just got in a fight and she wrote about it. And it's like processing it.
Let me tell you, some of that comes from, because, you think about like origin stories of what are the things that we value. And when we did a deep dive into like, why do we value authenticity so much? When we were first married, we were part of a church group and our, friend groups, and we hid our like marriage frustrations and the anger that we had towards each other. So we would put on this happy smiley face when people came over. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as they left, we went back to the screaming and cussing each other out. And when we look back at it, that's just absolutely not the kind of place we want to live in. The sad reality is that there's probably a lot of people that actually live and exist in that area too. And I think that for us, if we are authentic and we show up and we're like, hey guys, this is us. We open up our robe to the world about what's happening inside our marriage, then other people don't have to feel alone. Because one of the things that we also notice about other marriage resources, they're just so campy. Hey guys, everything's so good over here.
They treat you like a child. Yeah.
And it's like, I fucking hate my spouse right now. Like, it's like the last thing I want to hear is you like waxing eloquently about how romantic your last date night was. So
when we just fought on our date night and we're supposed to be the marriage experts, right? So a couple things I would say, we're two people, it sounds like you're someone like us where we always are trying to improve ourselves. We recognize that we don't have all the answers, that we are imperfect human beings, but we want to be healthy. Mm-hmm. We want to be emotionally, physically, spiritual, and mentally healthy. And so we practice self-care. I mean, if you're pouring into marriages and you're hearing bad stories all day long, we have really good boundaries in our life where we will turn off our phones and, we'll be with our kids for a whole day. We also practice what we preach. Like we go on date nights, like you were saying. So we also practice what we tell couples to do. And then there's a really good balance in that because of course, everyone wants to know, how do you guys work together full time on marriage? Because it's not like we're in the same company and he's doing accounting and I'm doing sales. Like we're in this office together 30 to sometimes 50 hours a week talking about marriage. So it's a very interesting dynamic. So that's why
our business is our marriage and our marriage is our business.
Yes. So practicing self-care and having boundaries, I will tell you, is very important for us to keep doing what we're doing. And we love what we're doing. When we get those messages that say, I mean, even like you, like my wife and I took your course and we talked about things we've never talked about. Talk about motivation to keep going. And then to hear, and these are the best stories. Then to hear when couples have children and the couple says, like, now our kids don't have to be raised. Oh, I get like so emotional about it. Now our kids don't have to be raised in a broken home because we were those kids and we hate it still as adults. And to know that we helped someone is just so rewarding and it's motivating to keep going.
So like, as far as, and I guess this was my perception as well, is like, I've been married for 11 years. Prior to starting a course. And, when I look at that, like, I don't have a lot of friends that have been married longer than I have. And so I'm kind of in that kind of the seniors guild of my group of friends, of the council of elders.
At 11 years old. At
11 years, right. It is what it is. But, I look at that and it's like, you feel like something, at least in your peer group. Like, it's kind of a weird thing to be married for that long and being like, oh yeah, like things are going really great. Like now we have to go work on it. So maybe what are some of those misconceptions then? I mean, and like, is there a difference between people who have been married for a year or two and people who have been married for 20 years as far as the way that they should approach your coursework?
Can I start this? Okay. One of the things that the most couples are is they're reactive and not proactive. Okay. So they usually wait until there's an issue and then they get help. And then the problem is by that point, there's a lot of unhealed just hurt and feelings. There's this like broken trust or broken communication, and it's going to be really expensive to fix. It's going to be worth the work, but it's going to be a lot more time, a lot more money. So ideally, Marriage 365, our title of our company, comes from, if you invest in your marriage a little bit every day, when the big stuff happens, it's actually not as much work.
It's like stretching.
Yes, right?
It's like stretching. So
it is, yes. If you hey, actually, I stretch every night, by the way. That was my New Year's resolution 3 years ago, and I kept to it. And I am still, every single night, I stretch at least 10 minutes. And I will tell you, now I can actually like go past my toes. I mean, I'm making progress here.
Well, I need to do that too.
Yes, but it's exactly like that, where if it's these small moments of discipline to say, I don't feel like loving my spouse today. They don't deserve for me to make them coffee this morning, but you know what? I'm going to choose love. Yeah. And I think that if more couples were proactive and less reactive, we would not see as many divorces. So that's one thing that I would say. And I think too, that there should be no shame. I really, in my lifetime, I know Casey and I want to kill the stigma that there's shame around needing help for your marriage. Oh, we're not doing well, or we fought. Everybody does. Everybody does. And I need people to know that, because if we can kill the shame and we can start seeing that everybody has issues, everybody gets stuck at some point, and there's no shame in needing help, then the pride and the insecurities that are keeping you from using resources or reaching out for help won't get in the way, won't stand in the way. I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that, babe.
No, it's good.
Well, you know, Meygan, you just mentioned a New Year's resolution from 3 years ago to touch your toes. I'm proud to say that I have my New Year's resolution sitting in front of me right now, which is a copy of your 365 connecting questions for couples. And so, you know, maybe talk a little bit about this book, or like where it came about. And, you know, I'd love to hear the story, because I know January 1st, this marked on our calendars. This is going to be our you know, we're going to take care of this thing all the way through it. So what's this thing about?
So Meygan and I, again, it's the business side of Marriage 365, right? So things are growing. Then you have these questions like, okay, so what's going to support us?
Yeah.
What's going to put food on the table while helping other people out? And I think we're so privileged to be able to wake up every day and think about how we can solve marriage problems. We did write a book. It was part of like one of our goals is like, we should publish a book, be a New York Times bestseller. But we didn't want to write a book about marriage.
Yeah.
Like that had already been done. It was more of like, we should write a book that's like a tool that couples can use. And then we started moving down this track of, we were already filming our webcast, and every webcast had connecting questions attached to them. So you watch the video, then you go through these questions that you went
Which is
through.
what you experienced in the course. Yep.
Then you're talking about stuff, right? And you're engaging.
And questions that you've never asked each other before. Even people that have been married 20, 30 years, you're like, wow, we've never even talked about this before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
my nickname is Question Queen.
yeah, Meygan does ask a lot of questions. She pesters me with a lot of questions. Where were you? No, just kidding.
No, I'm one of those. I'm one of those people
What's
that
going
when I meet someone, I'm just really truly interested in them, and so that's where that idea came from. Is in order to get to know each other, that's what you did when you were dating. You asked each other questions.
Yeah.
So
that should never stop.
So then we started to do a deep dive in like, why are these questions from webcast becoming so powerful? Because we were trying to encourage couples to say, you can't just watch the videos, because that's, you know, you can do that on YouTube, right?
Right.
It's about going through this learning module of like learning something new, but then actually like
reinforcing. Yeah.
Taking it out and playing with it and looking at all the dimensions and the sides and like, how does this impact our lives? And well, what if we actually started to, you know, talk about our sex life? Like what kind of foreplay do you actually like? Like all those connecting questions allow you to start to really own what you learn, right?
And would it be possible? I've just opened a random page in June. Can I just read one or two real quick?
Sure. And we also want you to read August 24th.
Okay.
It's Casey's favorite question.
All right. So I've got June 25th up right now. What do you have to say no to in order to accomplish your goals and desires? That's a heavy question. Later down on the page, is there anything I need to apologize for that's chipped away of your trust of me? Whew. Right, but like in a good way, right? I mean,
because couples aren't talking about it, and then it comes up, and you got to deal with it. Okay, August 24th, you've got this, Jake.
All right. All right. It's actually one of my best buddies my buddy Carson. That's actually his birthday. So.
Oh, he'll like this one.
For you, Carson.
This one's for you, Carson.
How does it make you feel when you bring me to orgasm? That is an awesome question.
Yes, it's definitely not a book, by the way, you'd want to leave out if you have children that can read.
Yeah.
There are rated R questions.
So I think for us, we were trying to figure out like, how do we help couples build emotional intimacy? Because emotional intimacy is the core of your relationship. it's the grounds for trust. And it's also physical intimacy comes out of that emotional intimacy.
So let me just chime in here. So we're meeting with the publisher. We're talking about possibly working with them. And they say to us, you know what, we decided actually to we're not going to do this because marriage books don't sell. And so when someone tells me no, I'm a go-getter. I'm like, oh, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Oh yeah.
So we decided to self-publish the book.
Yeah.
And within 5 months, we had sold 10,000 copies in 72 countries.
Wow.
And the average marriage book sells anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000 copies in its lifetime. And to this day, we've sold over 37,000 copies.
Something like that,
it's been 2.5 years since the book, in almost 85 countries. And I had one of those Pretty Woman moments, remember that scene where she walked in and she's like, you work off commission, right? Big mistake. Huge. I felt like I wanted to, I didn't have that moment with them, though I would love to have that moment with them one day.
But even from I'm really thankful that we went the self-publishing route, because from a financial perspective, making, $10 or $11 a book versus $1 a book, it was a key part of us being able to sustain and grow our business and bring on new team members and continue to invest in the development of our membership site. So I'm really thankful for, anybody that's picked up the book. And of course, it's one thing to build a business. If we're talking about the business side of things, right? It's one thing to build a successful business and to see it flourish. And I think as a business owner to know that, I'm able to directly contribute to our team members and put food on the table and for them to pay rent and to be economically successful.
Right.
But then to actually create a product that then comes back and pays you these dividends of stories of people that are we've heard stories of couples that are separated that started going through the question book and now they're moving back together again because they felt like they found connection again. Or couples that have been married for 20 plus years that are we are rediscovering each other again through this book. That is so gratifying. It's just unbelievable.
That's incredible. And any additional books in the works right now? What's new? Take me through the ecosystem, because I went on the website and you guys have so much stuff. So take me through that as we're starting to kind of wind down here. What is out there? What's available? What's the framework?
Let me tell you that the center of Marriage 365 is our membership. It's the one stop where you can interface with worksheets and videos and courses. And there's a marriage checkup there. And that's, we did this explosion of 9 different things going on at the same time. And now as we start to mature as an organization, we're starting to come back to, what are our hedgehog principle, right? What's the one thing that we can be really good at, that we can create the most amount of impact that can become our flywheel? And that turned out to be our membership. And
it has the highest success rate. I'd say the book is probably tied with it, but usually people who buy the book end up becoming a member because they love the question so much. So after we wrote that book that you have, the one for couples, all the dating and engaged people said, well, we want some questions. And we have a huge heart for premarital. And we have an online premarital course called Happily Ever After. So that's been really successful. And we have a book for dating engaged and newlywed couples with different kinds of questions that you should ask before you get married. And then all the parents said, I love this book, but we would love our kids to have something. And so then we wrote one for families. And that's really been amazing, especially in COVID, because all the families have way more time. And just to take that conversation to a deeper level with your children. And the junior high and the high school kids are actually liking the book more than the elementary kids.
So is it a similar format to this book then?
So it's 365 connecting questions for families. There's 365 connecting questions for engaged couples. And then our most recent one we just came out with this fall was 365 self-discovery questions. And this is really for individuals that just say, you know what, maybe my spouse wouldn't do a book for couples, or, I just want to learn who I am, the good, the bad, the ugly. Anybody who just wants to become the healthiest version of themselves, this is really a great book, because that's a really great thing to start in the new year too for people. So no more books for a while. We just published 4 books in 2 years. So I feel we're good with that for
Well,
now.
we're focusing on membership. That's like our big push for 2021. You know,
and it's got it's got courses in there, and like the course you took is in our membership. So we have so many things, and every month we add new content, and it's been something that's been so great because again, it's affordable. There's a free 7-day trial so people can check it out. And if it's not your jam, it's not your jam.
I want to do like the gangster move and drop we're dropping $100 million for new content, Netflix level membership. Boom, Marriage 365.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you what, I mean, again, just an endorsement from my perspective. The world that I see, at least through my lenses, is one that's really focused on, very surface level consumerism for the most part. We have very short snippets of information that we gather about other people that inform kind of a really ill-informed perspective of who they are and, what things really mean to them. And I think we've gotten in the habit of walking around with kind of this knowledge falsehood under this guise that we really do understand even the people closest to us. And I'm certainly guilty of that, making a lot of assumptions about my partner. And this has certainly been something that's allowed me to kind of open this doorway into oh, okay. We just happened to stumble upon this reigniting an intimacy course. What else is there out there? How are we not nurturing this thing that we built, right? Because this is our lifelong investment. This is the flower that needs feeding. And with all of the noise and things going around us, why are we not just taking 5 minutes to have a conversation about a question, or just kind of unpack an issue that's been eating at you for years and years, but doing it in a really responsible and reflective way? And I think you guys are putting out some amazing tools to do that. And I hope people take some time to go and find you. So where can they find you? And you've got a pretty big Instagram following too, so maybe shout that out as well.
Yeah, it's Instagram's a great way to just, that daily kind of reminder. We post new content every single day.
Well, and we get a chance to engage with our audience there too.
Yeah. So just head to marriage365.com. We have a free relationship quiz that we just ask you a few questions. That'll actually tell you hey, focus on this area, watch this video, things like that. Of course, and then definitely check out our membership, which you can find at marriage365.com.
That's awesome. Hey, anything else I didn't touch on before we part ways here?
I have one question for you.
Let's do it.
If you don't mind. Okay. If you're willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah, sure.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself since you've gotten married to Meygan?
About myself personally?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, since I've been married to my wife, and let's see, in my 11 years of wisdom.
Yes. In 11 years, you've realized this about yourself, or some kind of aha moment.
I had a lot of attention-seeking, validation type behaviors. And what I learned about myself is that the answer that she provides me a lot of times, no matter what it would not be good enough to fill the void that I have in certain areas of our relationship. And I read a really great book, and I'm sure that you've seen this in most therapy offices, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that book, for me, reading through some of those personifications and understanding, some of the validation seeking behaviors associated with, kind of men in my age group, especially, it's helped me tighten that up. But I spent a lot of years wasting time trying to have her give me something that I would have never received. And so, just, and once again, it's one of the reasons that, I'm so excited to talk to you guys, because, over the last couple of years, we've really been trying to put the time and the focus in to, you're not going to fix everything, but man, it'd be nice if, you could see where the mess is and just kind of know that that's where the mess is, as opposed to be overwhelmed with not having names for things or not making improvements. So yeah,
that's so great.
I love that. This is just kind of a construct, I think, that you went through in your journey of figuring out okay, how do I derive happiness in my life, and I totally sit with that too, because I think I got very angry at Meygan when she didn't live up to the expectations that I had for her early on in marriage. You're supposed to make me happy, and then she didn't, and it was just I unleashed fury on her. But one of the things that Meygan and I found, and this is, take this with Marriage 365 or any resource that you get, but we really see that there's these 3 steps to building that happiness within yourself. And the first step is really gaining self-awareness. That's when we really stop and question what we naturally do and ask the question, well, why are we doing this? What's driving us? What is the motivation? What's the thought process? And I think self-aware people begin to understand themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, and then they begin to see that, with empathy, their spouse, they become more spousal awareness too. And then the second stop is this idea, well, if I know who I am, I know who she is, I really begin to build confidence in my life because I own it. When she calls me out for being emotionally lazy or
avoidant,
a
blamer.
I was going to list it out, not you. I know my strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. I just wanted to remind you.
That's awesome.
When I don't admit my mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that used to really freak me out because I was insecure. I had these fearful thoughts about myself and a value statement that, somehow I was broken. But then with confidence, it's like, actually, you know what? Those broken parts, some will change, some won't. But, when she says, hey, you messed up in this area, that confidence allows me to not be shaken, but to actually go, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I need to apologize to you because I hurt you.
Right.
And when confident people, the third stop is really they set healthy boundaries. And I watched this with Meygan too. And she said, when we were arguing, she said, hey, I'm not going to engage with you when you use, bad words or you shame me or belittle or judge me and criticize me. She was setting a healthy boundary and we don't, she was in a sense teaching me, this is how I want to be treated.
Right.
And she didn't just set them, but she enforced them as well. So that when I crossed the line with the boundary, there was some action that actually happened in our relationship. And I think if you're building self-awareness, you're building confidence, and then you're starting to set these healthy boundaries, you're going to find so much joy within yourself. And I think even with Marriage 365, like you don't have to show up as a couple. Actually, our tools, about 40% of people that show up and use our tools or in part of membership, they're doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
They're doing it by themselves. And they're still coming back to us and saying, I can't believe, like my eyes are being aware. And it's amazing how much joy I can find. And I don't have to wait for my spouse to show up. That right there, if that was the one truth I could, plaster on billboards all across the world, it would be that because
if you want to make a better marriage,
you have to start by making a better you.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, hey, it has been an absolute honor to have both of you on. I'm excited to unpack some more coursework and obviously this book that I would recommend strongly to folks, the 365 Connecting Questions. Looking forward to maybe having you on in the future if you're interested. I'd love to continue to collaborate and chat with you, Casey and Meygan. Again, appreciate your time.